And I'll just start this. Are you there? Hey.
I'm over here. I'm down here on the blue track.
Our ability to hear, interpret, enjoy, and create music, all of those things, as a species, is one of the greatest things that makes us uniquely human.
Broadcasting from Nashville, Tennessee, offering a glimpse inside the music industry, shedding light on things they don't want you to know, and exposing some of the industry's biggest secrets. You're listening to the Turned Up Podcast, presented by Real Sound Productions. Here are your hosts, Jake Jones.
Hey there, how you doing?
And Robert Venable.
Hey there. 2-3 times. Hey ho. Hey there. Don't you know? Hey there, Bob. What was that Bobby's World? Remember that show? You remember that at all?
Bobby's World.
You might be too young. With
No.
Howie Mandel.
Howie Mandel and Bob Saget.
Yeah, you're right. Yes.
Yes. Oh, I loved Bobby's World. I was young, but I loved Bobby's World.
That was one of my favorite Saturday morning cartoons.
Yep.
Just the intro sequence with him riding that trike through his house.
Yep.
Like, man, that was good. That was good TV.
I think that's why I liked Rugrats so much. It was kind of reminiscent of Bobby's World a little bit.
I can see that.
It was like for the next generation.
The kid's point of view of a cartoon, and it was kind of cool.
Yeah, you know, I want to do a podcast actually on the voice actress that does a couple of voices for that show, and like every Cartoon Network character.
Right.
She does like Timmy, and she does one of the Powerpuff Girls. She's great. And
we should do that.
It's amazing. She always does kids, young boys or girls, but she's getting up there. You know, I mean, I say up there, not nearly as old as you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thanks for that.
But probably mid to late 40s.
Oh. This is the Turned Up Podcast, Season 2, Episode Numero Tres.
Trace, you read my mind. I was going to say Trace because I figured you'd say 3 because you're white.
Oh, well, what are you? From this point of view, you look white, but I'm not one to judge by outward appearances. Maybe you identify as something different?
I identify as a porpoise and a porcupine.
Man, Guy Gilchrist, the guy who illustrated a lot of like the Muppet Babies and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and a lot of Jim Henson's characters and stuff, man, just so many. We had him on a podcast, and ever since he said that, that's just one of my go-to things to say, and it's funny you said that.
You know, Robert, I want to release at some point, we'll have to edit out some of his language, but I want to release the full unedited version of that podcast, maybe for our patrons.
We should totally do that. We'll throw it up on the patron site and let them be able to hear it. If you want to become a patron, it's really easy.
Yeah, it's actually, you just go to turneduppodcast.com, look in the top right corner, and you'll see a button that says become a patron.
It's that easy.
There's several options. You can get anything as simple as just getting a shout out on the show and a free sticker, all the way up to actually seeing the notes as we type them up.
Coming in and hanging out with us in the studio while we record a podcast.
Getting to record an intro.
Oh, yeah.
To an episode, which we have a couple of those coming down the tube.
Lining those up right now.
Yes, so to get special episodes, special unedited episodes, as well as maybe just some special episodes in general that we just won't release to the public. But don't fear, if you're not a patron, you are getting the full Turned Up Podcast experience.
As intended.
And boy, do we have a good one today.
We do, and I'm excited about it. That is, we are talking about things. What are we calling this one, Jake?
It's only music, baby.
It's only music, baby. But we're going to get into some deep things. But first, in front of me, approximately 5 feet away-ish. Our knees are almost touching, but not really. The maiden voyage from the new recording studio. I don't even have
What's it called?
I don't know.
It needs a name.
I keep thinking about names. I can't come up with a name.
Robert has a new studio, and it's freaking awesome.
Yeah, I can't use Off the Wall Studios anymore. I used to have a studio with Lester Estelle. We had a studio for like 10 years, and it was always called Off the Wall, and I'm leaving that with him. We broke up on amicable terms. We're great. Everything's great. He and I, there's no personal reasons for this. It's straight, or like nothing personal to us, like to he or I. But I just wanted to do my own thing, and he's totally supportive of that. And we have custody of the kids. Just kidding.
You share custody.
But I need a studio name. I don't know what it is. This is the first time we've recorded anybody other than myself in this studio, and I don't know what to call it. I tell my wife it's the lab. I'm going to the lab, but I'm sure there's a million studios called the lab.
Here's what I challenge the Turned Up Podcast listeners to do.
Oh, I'll do it. I'll take their challenge. Please, yeah, do it.
Hashtag Rob's New Studio, ROBS New Studio. Hashtag Rob's New Studio, and put your name suggestion for his studio. You can do it on Instagram. Just type a word and post a picture of it. Hashtag it that. Or, of course, Facebook or Twitter. What do we need to name this studio? Because I have no idea. It's your studio. So
I do like, here's some things I would like. I'm into, I don't want it to be too dark as far as, like, I have a skull sitting in here, but I mean, I don't want it to sound total death metal or whatever.
Black Death Studios.
But I do wear all black every day. That's my thing. I'm into
like your rock. Blue shirt today.
It's a band that I've worked with and a band that, has spoken.
It does have black writing, so I guess that counts.
Yeah, I do like that kind of thing. I'm not into the whole new agey hippie type stuff. I do a lot of pop and rock music.
When you said pop, I thought you were going to say pot.
I do a lot of pot. No, I don't. I don't do drugs. I do a lot of pop music, a lot of rock music. All the guitars in here are black. I don't know. I'm a drummer. I do a podcast with you, Jake. I don't know. So I don't know. Don't get on band name generator to come up with a studio name for me, please.
Or do.
What was the one? Something Cheetos, Doritos?
Oh, I don't even remember.
Anyway, like I was saying, knee to knee, Jake Jones, the one and only. He is a producer. He is a mixer. He is an engineer, a songwriter, actually with #1 songs to his name on the Billboard charts. Singer and guitarist for the band As We Ascend, formerly of We As Humans, shared the stage with numerous huge bands that I'm sure you've heard of. One of my things that I love about you, Jake, that we have yet to discuss in our almost over a year. Have we done this for over a year?
Yeah, it's been over a year.
Of doing the Turned Up podcast. One of the things we haven't released publicly is how you have this miniature bed and breakfast / clothing company for fleas, catering toward like touring flea circuses, that you have aptly named Beds, Boulders, Fleas, and Clothes. Heads, shoulders, knees, and toes.
That's right. So I tried my luck at the whole sea monkeys thing.
Yeah, I know.
For a little while. And I think everyone figured out that all it was flakes of dandruff floating around in the water.
I never did anything.
But fleas are something I have in abundance. And, trying to turn my lemons into lemonade. So I started gathering them up. I thought, what do these guys need?
Yeah, what are they missing?
They're missing a nice place to go vacation. So I have it. I actually have 2 hosts. Their names are Willow and Buck.
Those are your dogs' names, by the way.
They're filling up quickly, so close to no vacancies.
You mean limited availability, exclusivity?
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I've got to work on the marketing of it.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, you can. Any fleas out there listening to this podcast, feel free to hitch a ride because every other flea on planet Earth already feels the need to do so.
Thus, the birth of Beds, Boulders, Fleas, and Clothes.
Boulders, fleas, and clothes.
Fleas and clothes.
Oh my gosh. Well, the comedian sitting cheek to cheek, butt to butt, no, I can't finish that.
Nope.
Mr. Robert Venable, let me tell you about him. He's a Grammy-nominated, Dove Award-winning engineer, producer, songwriter, drummer, guitarist, and an amazing friend. I'm looking here at his most recent gold record for his work with Kelly Clarkson, which is sitting right beside his list of what would you call VIP passes, which is all sitting right above a Billboard #1 plaque, as well as an article about him in Mix Magazine, which is all sitting across from the studio from all. I mean, I could just keep going, and with literally just right in. If I extend my arms straight forward, I could gather up more awards than I could possibly hold.
You look like you were trying to be a toddler with your parents. Pick me up. You had your both arms straight up. Mommy,
give me your awards. No, I mean, the guy's worked with Kelly Clarkson, 21 Pilots, Megadeth. What did you say? D12? Is that on the list?
Fade, D12. That was back in the hip hop days.
Oh yeah. Even
DMX, Rough Riders.
DMX, the Rough Riders. Yeah. Hilarious story, which I want him to tell on the podcast.
Have we not told that?
You haven't told that story.
Oh man,
not on the podcast.
Wow,
it's a great story.
I feel like I've told it several times on the mic, but I wonder if we cut it out.
Maybe next week.
Okay.
But Robert is a person who always feels the need to expand himself, to expand his horizons, to learn new things, to get better, to always better himself. And for that reason, this past summer, he took up the digiphonf. You could call it a finger flute, but he's been learning it for a while now and is actually offering online Skype lessons. Why don't you tell them the link so that they can go in and apply for lessons for the digiphonf?
Awesome. My history with the digiphonf is not a very long history. It's very, very brief. I barely even found out. I feel like it was just today I found out about this instrument.
Maybe even seconds ago.
Maybe right now is when I found out this instrument. But you can hear my solo tracks that I've recorded for SoundCloud, as well as my exclusive YouTube page. If you just go to jakejonesproductions.com and / just kidding. Man, I don't even know what that instrument is. I have nowhere to go with this.
You're going to have to look it up because it's
Digifomf?
FONF. DIGI.
Well, digi is like for fingers. I get that.
FONF, which I'm guessing is flute, fonf.
Fomf. It's so much fomf.
And finger flute.
Wow.
It's hilarious. In fact, there's a guy they call the finger flute guy.
That's unfortunate.
There's a YouTube video of him playing it.
The finger flute.
It's
is it an actual instrument or is it some shape you make with your fingers?
No, it's an instrument invented by a Serbian guy or a Romanian guy. I'm not sure. It's a recent invention, like within the last 5 years.
Wow.
And
not that many instruments being invented these days.
You're not going to see too many people playing it because it looks horribly inappropriate.
So despite my questions about the Digifomp, I am actually really great at it. So look it up and probably don't ever look it up again.
What are we talking about today, Robert?
Today is an episode that we are basing, the whole idea came to, I think you came up with this idea, came to us, I'll say, but based off of an episode of Explained, which you can find on Netflix right now.
Yep, by Vox.
Put out by Vox. Yeah, and it goes into depth about basically how our enjoyment of music as human beings is unique to us and not to any other kind of living being on Earth. No other animals, no other creatures can enjoy music the same way humans do.
So even though the episode's titled It's Only Music, that is very far from the truth. Music touches our souls. It can literally change the way we think. It can even help us battle addictions, depression.
Bring people out of comas or other diseases. Old people, like myself, who are battling dementia or Alzheimer's.
This is why you work in the musical industry.
As well as old people like myself who are battling dementia or Alzheimer's.
Here he goes. Yeah, that's right. That's good. Yep.
Fortunate that I don't have Alzheimer's, so.
Or dementia.
But old people like myself who are battling dementia.
So anyway.
No, but music can cure or help or aid or facilitate people with problems and issues and things developing in your brains that may be otherwise, crippling. Music has a way of healing and bonding.
And in this episode, we're going to talk about why and how. But make sure, check out the series Explained by Vox on Netflix. Watch it all the way through. However, disclaimer, we are not affiliated with Vox or any of their related channels whatsoever. It was just such a great episode. It moved me when I saw it, and I thought I want to research this further, and we have to do a podcast on it. So that's...
Yeah, netflix.com/explained, and you can find their whole series there and look for the one called Music. This episode, it was inspired by that, so we're going to get into some stuff about that. Make sure you listen to it all the way to the end. There might be a little twist on it, because some of the things that were explained in that video might have some evidence that really back it up, but there's other evidence that we found in some other things that you just want to hear about how animals perceive music and can make music or not.
So, let's get going. What is music? So this might sound very silly and elementary. If you're listening to this, most likely you know what music is, unless you have a disease called Maya Moya.
Wow.
I think is how you say it.
That sounds very selfish.
But we'll get to that in a moment. Maya Moya.
Maya Moya.
So music, literally just did a Google search, and it is defined by Google's dictionary, which has probably taken over more than even Merriam-Webster at this point.
Right.
Or maybe it is Webster's, I'm not sure. Vocal or instrumental sounds, or both, combined in such a way as to produce beauty of form, harmony, and expression of emotion. Alternatively, it is the written or printed signs representing vocal or instrumental sound, talking about like sheet music.
That makes sense.
Is one of the greatest things that makes us uniquely human.
Yeah, and until seeing that thing on Netflix, and you telling me about this, Jake, I guess it's one of the things I never really thought about. I never thought that, yeah, you're right. Humans are the only species on the face of the earth which can hear and interpret / make or create and enjoy music.
Yeah, it's definitely something I never thought about. And so that is, I think, the thing that really drew me in is like, wow, we really are special. And, whether you are an evolutionist or a creationist, I personally am a creationist. But regardless, there are many things that set the human species apart from any other animal or mammal. And music, I think, is one of the biggest things. And let's just dive in.
So there's this idea that excessive repetition in music comes out of a lack of creativity, complexity, and prowess.
I hear it all the time.
Everybody said, and I give the same advice, and you give the same advice in these songwriting classes, which, by the way, you and I just had a section put into.
That's right.
Yeah, the Song Chasers course from last episode that we talked about, that Full Circle Music and Seth Mosley are putting out, or have put out by this point, called the Song Chasers. You can check that out at turneduppodcast.com/Seth, SETH, just to see what that's all about. But we have a section in there where we talk about how in modern popular music, and most genres, we talked about rock, you and I, but how repetition is something that's very common and encouraged in order to create something that's memorable in the musical state.
That's right. So I hear a lot from people who don't create music, or that create music that people don't typically listen to, or not many people listen to, this idea that repetition is dumb, it's lame. Even in Christian music, especially like worship music, the music that people sing in church
music,
I hear people making fun of the fact that they sing the same bit over and over again, or that the bridge lasts for a long time. They just keep singing the same words over and over again.
Right.
And I can even say I've tried to jump on that bandwagon before, maybe not specifically with that genre, but just saying, oh my gosh.
Again and again and again. Yeah.
The truth is, it's probably more jealousy than anything. It's like, man, there's like 4 words, and they're singing those 4 words over and over and over again, and that song has sold millions of copies. Why didn't I think of that?
Right.
If you can't join them, just make fun of them. No, but this idea is not new, that excessive repetition is bad.
Yeah. Do you remember November 6th of 1882?
I bet you do.
I do.
How old were you?
I can't even remember that far ago. It's after my 200th celebration.
Closer to 250, you think?
250th was the big riot on the rocks where I had we all just sat on rocks and talked because that's all you could do back in then. It's sometime around there. But that was the exact date, November 6th of 1882, was when composer Ferdinand Prager actually published a 16-page case against repetition during the Royal Music Association's proceedings called "On the Fallacy of the Repetition of Parts in the Classical Form."
So there was this association called the Royal Musical Association. They were, from what I understand, like academic, and they were all about kind of finding out and creating rules for music, for what is good music. I don't know. So they had this, and this was I believe this was in London. They had this association that they were the final authority on what actually is good music.
So you may be scoffing right now at the fact that there's an authority on this, or people even claiming to be an authority on who sets the rules. But we currently, right now, in the United States, have this. We have we have the RIAA and we have the NARAS, the people who do the Grammys, people who do the Billboards, and hand out all the awards and certifications for that, because there are standards. There are standards you can look up online for recording and what is the best way to do things and what is defined as what in the music industry. And there are suggestions and guidelines on what to do by the so-called authority of music.
So Ferdinand Prager, November 6th, 1882, presents this case. What does he say?
He says, this is a quote, by the way, all will readily admit that a first impression, however striking, is weakened when followed by an immediate repetition. Would ever a poet think of repeating half of his poem? A dramatist, a whole act? A novelist, a whole chapter? Such a proposition would be at once rejected as childish. Why would it otherwise be with music?
That at once in there, I first read as like at one time would have been rejected, but no, it's saying like immediately.
You're right.
That proposition would be immediately rejected as childish. Why do we do it with music? But that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
In fact, popular music has only gotten more repetitive as time has progressed. And, there's even studies. University of Arkansas, your home state, close enough.
Yeah, well, I deem it's my home state.
Yeah, pretty much.
Sure.
Even released they have a study there. We were watching, this woman plays these random raindrop sounds.
Yeah. It sounds like water drops hitting water.
But when it repeats, when you add repetition, suddenly it starts to sound like music to our brains.
It defines and declares a melody. Like, oh, it's repeated here, so that must be the melody because we're hearing it repeatedly and over again.
There is a composer, and I don't have his name here. There's a composer who specifically shares this sentiment with Ferdinand Prigger that repetition in music is ridiculous. And so he refuses to repeat anything twice in his music. He's a composer, so there's no lyrics or melody, vocal melody. But all of the instrumentation is atonal, meaning that there's not, like, it doesn't fit inside of a key.
Right.
It's just basically random notes, random instruments firing off at random times. It was at UCLA. I can't remember, but college study. They played this music for several students and asked, how much do you like this? And of course, the general consensus was, I don't get it. It's weird. It's random. Taking the exact same piece of music, whatever song they picked of his, they chopped it up and made bits of it repeat. So nothing changed, still atonal, still random, except that it repeats. There's repetition.
Right.
And played it for another set of students, and the amount of enjoyment that they got from it was exponentially higher, although I'm sure still not, didn't like it as much as Kesha. But they could make sense of it. It's that repetition that even gives us the ability to turn random sounds into music.
That makes sense. And that's, we practice what we preach. We do repeat things, and that is what creates a hook or something memorable in your head, like an earworm. We talked about that previously in a podcast. But there was something you and I were looking at right before we started the podcast.
This is really cool.
Which I want you to talk more about because you actually discovered it. I just found it later and just spent a little bit of time playing with it. But it's a website or web page. This guy named Colin Morris, he's a computer programmer and / music lover. He invented this tool that basically maps out the musical repetition in a lot of top 10 songs from the 60s all the way to today. And I was looking at a Sia song, and I was looking at that Carly Rae Jepsen song, Call Me Maybe, which is one of those things I kind of reference a lot of times when I tell people about repetition. Like, how many times do you think she says Call Me Maybe? Just look at that. Anyway, the thing's called SongSim. Tell us about it, Jake.
So SongSim, you can literally just Google SongSim, SONGSIM, one word, and pull this up. And it's this tool. He runs these songs, and he actually, from what I understand, went into every top 10 from the 1960s until now.
It's a lot of songs.
And I don't know if he mapped them out or if his software did it. I know he has his master's in computer programming, I believe. Yeah. It's a graph that puts points when words repeat or intersect. You just have to look at it, and it's cool because he created this tool, and then on that website, if you again just Google SongSim, he gives like a brief tutorial. It's not that hard to figure out, but pull up these songs, and it creates a beautiful pattern, but also lets you see how much repetition, it does it by words.
Yeah.
So if the song has, say, 135 words, then the graph is going to be 135 by 135, and it's going to have a square that starts in the top left corner all the way down to the bottom right. And then every time a word repeats, it creates a square at the intersecting point
on the graph.
Yeah, you got to see it. It's really cool.
It makes a really cool image, and it's a way to like visualize lyrics in a song and see where it repeats and how many times and how many words are repeating. And it creates kind of like this little butterfly kind of image. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, and so based on that data, he was able to just simply create a graph, like just a normal line graph from 1960 until 2018, and how many songs in the top 10, how much repetition is in each song. And you just see the line go up, 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 up.
Obviously, there's a reason for that because music affects the brain. It affects the way we think, affects the way we perceive things, and can physically affect the way that our brain operates.
It's incredibly powerful. And again, it's one of those things that as human beings, we take for granted. We don't even think that, we don't really think about what's happening to our brains while we listen to a piece of music or even while we create music, but it's a freaking lot.
All right, Jake, when you think of a slow song, a lot of times that invokes a feeling that's either somber or sad or like maybe a love ballad, something that's kind of sappy. You know what I mean? It strikes a chord with you, pun intended, in your brain that's that makes you feel a certain way. And in an upbeat song, it might be more driving or energetic or powerful or empowering, or something that might get you riled up or angry or excited. And there's reasons for that. That's the tempo is creating an emotion.
It's very powerful. In fact, music, it can affect our mood, the perception of our surroundings. Crazy enough, music actually changes our brain. And it's what music does for your brain when you listen to it is the same thing that drugs do for your brain, and that is triggering your pleasure centers of your brain by releasing dopamine.
What if you don't like music? What if you physically just don't like music? Does it still do the same thing? Releases dopamine, or does it just make you mad?
I don't know. I've never met anyone that doesn't like any music.
I know there are people who like solitude, or there are people that are on the spectrum, the autism spectrum, where like sounds and music will affect them, just overwhelm them. But I don't know if they don't like it as much as it affects them in a way that just triggers things for them.
I'm not sure. Yeah. That's a great question. Because I would say, I almost said, like, if you don't like music, there must be something wrong with you. But I genuinely believe that there probably is something off in the way that your brain is processing signals, for you to just simply hate music altogether or not even be able to perceive it.
Interesting.
Which we'll get to in a moment.
Yeah, so you were saying that music can actually affect your brain the same way that drugs do.
Right, drugs, sex, alcohol, tobacco, nicotine, all those things, you getting on Facebook, the things that we love and we do all the time, addictions.
Sugar.
Yeah. It's dopamine that our brains are like, oh, we need to do that again.
Yeah, and music actually triggers both hemispheres of your brain, like you were saying, all four lobes, the frontal lobe, the parietal, the occipital, and the temporal lobe, plus even the cerebellum. Just kind of laying it out here, you and I can alternate on these, but the frontal lobe is located just behind the skull of the forehead, and it governs our ability to reason, to make judgments, to organize information, to control some motor and muscle functions of your body.
The parietal lobe is near the back and top of the head. It's involved with visual, attention, sensation, like touch and pressure, and integration of senses. So, all the other senses.
Right, all my favorite things. The occipital lobe is located at the back of the skull and controls your vision and what you see.
The temporal lobes are located on each side of the head above the ears. They control hearing and are related to smell, taste, and short-term memory, especially visual and verbal memory.
Right, and because of all of this and being able to affect that part of the brain and all the parts of your brain, listening to and creating music has actually been proven to improve memory, your vocabulary, social and emotional perception, and cognitive abilities. It's kind of cool.
So that's something that I just love about being human, as silly as that sounds.
No, yeah.
When you listen to music, it is literally triggering so many different things in your brain. Literally, just to name a few, your brain is having to perceive volume, emotion, pitch, relative pitch, melody, hearing, timbre, timing, beat perception, movement, language, harmony, musical imagery, sequencing, and memory.
Whoa. So when I listen to music to relax, we're actually like invoking all the parts of my brain, which is can that make you relax? I don't know.
Well, I think it can. I've fallen asleep to music many times, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be like classical music or soft music.
Yeah.
Just music I enjoy. But I find that when I fall asleep to music, which is rare because it's just not comfortable to wear my earbuds while I'm trying to sleep.
I wish it were.
I tend to fall asleep and have better sleep. It kind of like sets my brain down easily.
Same way when I take NyQuil.
Man. No, but that did make me think. In fact, my mom and I were just talking recently, and she was saying, trying to tell me this fun fact that, you only use like 10% of your brain. Not true. You use your entire brain. I think, thanks to the internet, we probably all know that by now. But in case you don't, you use all of your brain. And one of the beautiful things about music is it uses all of your brain. In fact, actually, music aids in learning better than only studying, for instance, mathematics.
Yeah.
Or only studying reading.
I firsthand agree with this. With my kids, my twins, they're 10 years old, have the same exact classes, different teachers, but they switched to the same classes at their school. And my daughter learns in a way faster. She always begs me, hey, can you put my memory verse in a song? Or can you put blah, blah, blah in a song to help me just remember my times tables? I remember when we had to do that a few years ago. And stuff like that, where I just come up with a little beat and a melody, and they memorize it so much quicker and can learn a lot quicker because the music will affect all the different parts of your brains. And something just fires off in her head where she's like, that's what I needed.
Hey, do you remember Gabby Giffords or Gabrielle Giffords?
The government official from Arizona, up in Arizona, got shot or was attempted assassination over in Arizona somewhere.
State representative, yeah. So she was shot. There were 6 people who lost their lives, and I think 20 people were injured.
It was all over the news.
Yeah. She was shot in her head, in the left side of her brain, and something special about the left side of your brain is that's where your ability to speak comes from. So they were able to save her. She lived, and actually with fairly minimal brain damage. However, her ability to talk was lost, and she had to relearn how to do it. How do you think she did it?
I'm guessing it has something to do with music, Jake.
Exactly. No, they found that singing songs to her and having her sing them back with words and phrases, there were moments, and you can actually go online and watch this. I did in researching for this podcast, where she was really struggling to say the words that she was trying to get out, but she could sing them.
Yeah, because music affects, like we said, multiple/all parts of your brain simultaneously. She was able to use some of the energy from the part of the brain that she had control of or could, was still working properly, and kind of retrain that side of her brain to work properly.
It's amazing that basically, from what I understand, happened is where her left side of her brain that did control speech was damaged so much that the right side of her brain was able to be trained for her to be able to talk.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So music, the brain, it's truly incredible. And you were telling me a story about, what's her name?
DJ Tokimonsta.
Tokimonsta?
Jennifer Lee is her real name, but we were listening to some of her tracks. She's been around a while, but she has some tracks that are even as current as 2017 up on iTunes Music if you want to listen to them. One of our best tracks were from like 2011. We heard that one earlier.
So pause. Robert.
What?
You're a music producer.
I've been called that before.
What would happen if you completely lost the ability to hear music?
I've talked about this a lot, mainly when my kids are yelling about a foot from my ear. I said, you cannot do this because this is my livelihood. If I couldn't hear or hear music, I'd have to find a new profession. I would be really good at making coffee, maybe. I don't know.
Now, I mean, you can hear, you can understand words. When people talk, you can tell what they're, no problem. But all of a sudden a song comes on and it just sounds like gibberish, weird sounds.
I'd freak out. I don't know. I'd have no idea what I would do. I would really freak out.
That is what happened to Jennifer Lee, or Tokimonsta.
Tokimonsta. She's an American record producer and DJ from L.A., and she came down with a disease called Moya Moya disease, the one we talked about earlier.
Moya Moya. I'm pretty sure I said it wrong earlier.
Moya Moya. I don't know how to say it.
I think it's Moya Moya. I think that's
how
right.
It's spelled.
Yeah.
It's a disease in which certain arteries in the brain are constricted and kind of collapse.
Yeah. So basically, I'm not completely sure how they discovered this with her, but they had to go in and reroute the arteries in her brain. They had to take arteries from other places and put them in, and it was like plumbing. Like they had to reroute the plumbing.
Right.
And as a result, she lost the ability to talk. Is that right?
Yeah, and comprehension skills, stuff like that. She had a couple surgeries, and right after that, lost her language.
So crazy story. She's sitting in the hospital bed, recovering. She's awake. She's watching her favorite show. And I was trying to remember earlier what it was. I can't remember. But
I can't either.
So she's watching her favorite show, and the intro rolls, and the theme music starts playing. Now, it's her favorite show. She's seen it hundreds of times.
Yeah.
the theme music's playing and she's listening going, what the heck am I listening to right now? What is this noise?
To her, it sounded like gibberish, like just junk, like noise.
And she had seen the show enough that she knew that there was a theme song, but she like the idea of what a song is supposed to sound like was completely missing. It was all gone.
And there's a phenomenon that can happen that you and I have talked about before. I don't even know if there's a name for it, but it's where your brain starts to correct things that it knows in a familiar way, how to put it back to where it makes sense to you.
For instance, I learned in high school that you can wear these lenses that will flip everything upside down.
Right.
And because our eyes already perceive everything upside down, you can try like a pinhole experiment. Our brains will flip everything right back up again.
But yeah, so just in the same way, her brain started auto-correcting, and she was eventually able to decipher and figure out what that was actually music and process it as music instead of noise.
So actually, crazy enough, her brain starts correcting itself. This happens, and she starts working on an album.
Moulin Rouge.
But at the time, she still wasn't fully able to interpret the music. So she could hear music, but creating it, understanding it all the way was still not all the way there. And she made this music and had to kind of reteach herself what music sounds like.
Isn't that weird?
And you can actually listen to that album. In fact, she says it was one of her most prized works ever.
Probably really cherished on a personal level to her.
Moulin Rouge, is that what you said?
Moulin Rouge, I believe.
Lunerouge.
Yeah.
And I encourage you to check it out. It's actually really cool music. So music, there it is. And that's just a small part of it. But again, music triggers so many different parts of our brains that we as human beings have that not every animal in the animal kingdom has.
Right.
And on top of that, we already know that we have an emotional capacity greater than any other animal. The truth is, though, science has found, right, that there are some animals that can hear / perceive music. Is that right? Or
well, so here's the thing, Jake. Like, we did all this research and we found that animals really aren't capable of hanging with the music, right? Like, they can mimic and they can repeat and they can, call and response, or if you knock a certain pattern, they can knock back. Certain chimpanzees and apes can do that. Bonobos. And, but that's all results from scientific, like, experiments, right? Lots of university trials and studies and whatever have found that. But recently we discovered, and here's the twist, that there are other scientific experiments done by other researchers which have evidence saying that they can reproduce and hang with the beats and stuff like that, the same way humans can. A very, very, very small percentage, but certain, like bonobos, the chimpanzee that shares 98% of the human genome.
So I'm gonna play a little bit of devil's advocate here.
I hope you do.
The research on the bonobos, what? So tell me what it was, because I know that you were explaining it before we actually started recording. These bonobos are able to mimic beats, is that right?
Well, the research and the report on the research that we found wasn't exactly conclusive, but the way that they worded it leads you to believe that when they were knocked certain tempos on a glass window right in front of them, they were able to knock back the same at the same tempo. And if you speed up, they could speed up. And that if you were to play a beat or a rhythm or keep a steady meter at a certain tempo, they could hit along with it. Whereas the research we had done and spent more time on, you and I, Jake, said that they are more reactive and see your hand coming down. So they're going to try to hit at the same time as your hand if you're going to knock with them. If you're going to clap at the same time, they'll see your hands closing, so they'll clap. But it's not because they're anticipating the beat, the 1, 2, 3. If they're seeing your hand clap, they're going to clap too. It's kind of like that whole thing where you don't know the words to a song, but you're trying to follow along. It's slightly behind because you don't know it.
I just feel it's necessary to give the audience
an example. See, like now you're going to try to What is I can make up words what and not order what? So like that, it's one of those things where you're reacting.
You're always a little bit behind.
You're looking for signals and you're trying to keep up with. And that's what I think that you are on board with, Jake, saying like that's probably what's happening. I think I'm tending to lean that same direction where I think the bonobos and the animals that were studied in these studies were more reactionary, and if that's a word, where those results were portrayed in a way of like, oh, they're able to make beats and keep tempos.
Well, right. And the thing is, again, something that's absolutely fascinating to me is that one of our human abilities that we completely take for granted is to be able to clap to a beat.
Yeah. And not all of us are great at that. Go to any concert and watch for the person clapping on 1 and 3.
Right. This is true. But our brains have a unique ability to anticipate a beat. If you don't know that it's coming before it's coming, then you'll do what the bonobos do and you'll clap a little bit behind.
Yeah, just because you're trying to keep up, but you're anticipating it.
Right. You're like, oh, there was a beat, let's clap.
Yeah.
Oh, there was another beat, okay, let's clap. Rather than being like, okay, there's going to be a beat.
Right. Anticipating it properly.
So the bonobos, yeah, they were able to mimic beats, repeat them. But as far as in sync, I don't know. However, there was a magical cockatoo. Is that correct?
In that video that we watched on Netflix, explained about music, they talked about a cockatoo, and they showed the YouTube video of that we've all seen probably, that they start playing, what song is it?
It was a Backstreet Boys song.
Yeah, and they start playing that song, and this cockatoo starts bobbing its head in rhythm.
And before we go any further, I will say it's not a mystery that animals can be trained to bob their heads or even dance, move their feet along to a song.
Or even learn the melody with some singing/talking birds.
But that's, if you break it down to the numbers, it's one particular BPM or tempo, and they're trained for that one. If you put a different song on or speed it up or slow it down, suddenly it just goes back to being complete noise for them.
It doesn't know what it means, right? But there's a reason for this. In the studies that we're talking about in this section of the podcast, which we should probably get to. The guy named Charles Snowden, he's an animal psychologist at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, who studies musical preferences of animals, which is an interesting job title, which I'm surprised I haven't gotten from you yet, Jake.
Who's funding that is what I want to know.
The taxpayers of Wisconsin. So people assume, this is what he said, people assume that if they like Mozart, their dog will like Mozart. And if they like rock music, they say that their dog prefers rock. He says that recent and ongoing research shows that animals actually may share our appreciation and capacity for music. Despite what we were talking about previously, Jake, that species-specific music, basically tunes which are specifically designed using the pitches, tones, and tempos that are familiar to their particular species. Meaning, as humans, most people that we surround ourselves with, Jake, you and I, we enjoy music that are in the keys or registers that we speak or are able to produce with our vocals, singing, and tempos that, get this, and this will make sense to you, are within the BPMs, the range, the beats per minute of our pulse, of our heartbeat. So our resting heartbeats are around 50, 60, 70, depending on your blood pressure, beats per minute, which are about the slowest of all slow songs. They aren't going to find one slower than that.
Or 120 if you double that.
If you do a lot of coke. But if you run or are having problems or, do a lot of active activities, your heart can accelerate almost, to 150, 160 beats per minute, sometimes more than that if you have extreme athlete type stuff, which will actually go down. So maybe not a good example, but you know what I mean. The most music that we listen to is between 60 beats per minute and 150 beats per minute, which is our pulse. So they're saying that animals who have different spectrums that they hear or communicate with, like dogs, they hear at a higher spectrum than us. And their heartbeats are faster than ours. Large breeds like Labradors or Mastiffs can actually mimic, are close or related to an adult male human. So they might actually be able to hear and enjoy music that adult male humans hear and enjoy. But like little Chihuahuas, their heartbeats are pounding a lot faster. They speak or hear a lot higher. So Snowden worked together with this cellist and composer named David Tye to compose music tailored to suit animals based off of their average pulse rate and their average spectrum of being able to communicate or hear.
What do you think of this, Robert?
This was a study done in Wisconsin. Just kidding. My wife's from Wisconsin.
So
all right. Here it is, laid out.
I'm even looking at a website here that we're going to get to here in a second.
I feel like it's a lot of hocus pocus. I feel like it's a lot of like, hey, how can I make a salary this year? Maybe I'm studying animal music. Yeah, that sounds great. I need $80,000 to study animal music. And I'm going to make music for horses, dogs, cats, and goldfish. It's going to be great. I'm sure he's a nice guy and knows a lot more stuff about music than I do. However, to me, it's a little hippie, a little weird, a little out there.
Holistic, I think was the word I used earlier.
Yeah.
This website here is one of their newest projects, right? And it's called musicforcats.com, which I highly encourage you to check out.
There's a sound clip on there you can listen to. To me, it sounds like purring.
I wonder what are the copyright laws?
I don't know if we can play. I mean, we are journalists in a sense.
This is true. Well,
I don't know, but
I don't want to break anybody's speakers. No, but when you hear it, it's like, okay, this is clearly someone just thinking, I don't know, what kind of music do you think a cat would like? I don't know, probably music like this.
We heard sounds in that song that sound like cats meowing.
Right, and purring.
And I'm like, that's a little out there to me.
I was recently watching the Netflix Joe Rogan special, and he talks about this hashtag vegan cat. And these vegans that are, you can't kill animals because, whatever, got to eat vegetables, but they feed their cats chicken and fish and all kinds of animal products. So now they're doing vegan cats. He's like, if you look at the pictures, they're all like half asleep because they don't have the right food. They're all dying off. They're killing, sweet Fluffy lived to be 4 years old. Like the vegan cat, it's like, it reminds me of those kinds of, like the people with vegan cats put on music specifically designed for their cats whenever they leave the house. Yeah.
Musicforcats.com. So Snowden and this cellist composer David Tye that we talked about in 2009 actually made 2 songs for tamarins, which are, monkeys. But they have like vocal ranges up to 3 octaves higher than humans and heart rates, which are twice as fast. So they made these songs and they made some that were a little up tempo at the higher of that range, which the tamarins heard. And they heard that music that was that fast, and they started getting excited and almost like, vicious a little bit, like angsty. But then they made a couple of ballads, and they calmed down and became unusually social when they heard what they called the Tamarin ballad.
Huh.
So there was a reaction to it, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe they heard louder noises that are faster and then slower noises.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, and the thing is, it's obviously all of these animals can hear things. And nobody's debating that. They also obviously can't interpret it as music, or else they would have the ability to then recreate it.
Well, they don't have Pro Tools or Cubase or anything.
No, they do. They just have to get a job and then buy a license, and it's not that hard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we need to fix this.
But no, something in this research that I found out that I thought was really, really interesting. So while these. Some monkeys, apes, even there's the cockatoo. We started talking about it. What the study they found, this Backstreet Boys song, he could dance to it. And this scientist professor, I think, he tried speeding up or slowing down the song.
Yeah, speeding it up, yeah.
And this cockatoo in particular had the ability to dance to the new tempos.
Which we thought was not possible.
Right. And for most species and most animals, and even most cockatoos, it's not.
He's a special cockatoo.
He's very special. So there's a seal that has a similar ability, can dance to different songs. But when you boil it down again, they're really just recognizing a tempo, a beat.
Yeah, hearing something repeated in the song, maybe a certain particular noise. They're like, oh, that's the noise that's triggering my tempo right now.
Birds can mimic, as we know. We've heard parrots and other.
There's a ton of YouTube videos you can watch. Yeah,
birds we know can mimic songs. They can sing along, and they might even start to recognize a song But the second that you transpose it, so you put it in a different key, or even the same song in a different octave, so the same notes just higher, the same notes just lower, the bird loses it. It's gone. It can't recognize that any longer.
It just looks at you like you're dumb.
It sounds like a brand new thing to them. And so really, as human beings, our ability to hear music, to enjoy it, to listen to it, to feel that emotional connection to the songs that we love is very special and something that I know I will never take for granted again.
Right. So in conclusion, obviously, I think that animals can, to an extent, hear pitch. There's actually a study by Psychology Today that suggests that dogs, in particular wolves, can discern pitch because when they're in a pack and one of them starts howling and another one chimes in, it'll chime in a different pitch. And if it finds itself on the same pitch of howl, it'll change it on purpose to stick out. So somehow it can hear and distinguish and adjust its pitch on some level.
That's wow.
Yeah, so no wolf wants to end up on the same note as any other in the choir, This is why a dog howling along with a group of singing humans is instantaneously noticeable. It will never end up quite on pitch with the humans. Even though the humans might try to match pitch with the dog will change.
Oh, wow.
In order to stand out.
Oh, that's really interesting. My girl dog, she's a little younger, her name's Willow. She doesn't bark a lot. She doesn't make a lot of noise. But if you start howling, she'll howl back at you. And I've noticed that with her, but I didn't. I just assumed it was because that's just how she howls.
That's what dogs do. Yeah, same with ours. One of our dogs does the same thing.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Well, man, there it is. Music and how us as human beings are able to perceive it. Is that the word? Perceive?
Perceive and comprehend and
even create.
Yeah.
Is completely unique to us.
I think that's cool.
And why? It's, you see all the different pieces of your brain that have to come together just to even listen to your favorite, who's really popular right now.
The Beatles.
Oh, yeah.
No, not them.
I asked the wrong person.
It just seems like just yesterday. All my troubles seem so far away. Who's popular right now? I don't know. Anybody. Pick somebody. Drake. I don't know. He's got a song right now.
So the reason you're able to listen to that Drake song and enjoy it is saying something pretty spectacular about the way your brain functions. The next time somebody calls you a dumbhead, just tell them, yeah, right, I like Drake. No, don't tell them that. That may not help.
That might not in some circles.
If you like Drake, it's good for you. I'm not a fan, but that's just me.
I think he's talented. I think he sold out to sell records.
You're right. I've heard some amazing Drake stuff. Same for like T-Pain. We just said that, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Talking about autotune. Go back and listen to that episode, season 2, episode 1, autotune, and then go find that T-Pain clip. Even though he's known for his autotune vocals, the man can sing.
He was actually just in the news this last week for whatever airline he was flying. The flight attendants put on "Buy Me a Drink" on over the intercom system for him. It's kind of funny.
I want to know, did he buy everyone a drink?
A drink? Maybe give him like vouchers or something. Oh man. This is probably time we should get out of here. But first, we should probably tell you guys how to stay in contact with us. And we want to hear about anything related to today's episode that we talked about and your insight on it. What do you think? Like, what side are you on? Do you think animals can hear music and discern music? Or like, oh man, Fluffy always calms down when I put Mozart on. Or my dog does sing in pitch and does a really good Frank Sinatra. I don't know.
Another question. Any of you out there with synesthesia?
Ooh, I want to hear about that.
That's where your brain starts because it affects your visual cortex. Right. Your brain sees colors and when you hear music and all that kind of stuff is really cool.
What if your brain hears colors?
That would be weird.
I have, admittedly, in a production session, told let's get it a little more blue, a little more dark, and a little less yellow and orange. Just because trying to find a way to relate to the artist sometimes, you got to think outside the box, but it works.
Let's get it more like a tree growing in the Amazon and less like a frog.
A little more Rosie O'Donnell. A little less Roseanne Barr. I don't even know what that means.
That's what it would sound like. Turn up that Metal Zone pedal.
Metal Zone. If you want to, hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at Turned Up Podcast.
And of course, Facebook.com/Turned
Up Podcast or turneduppodcast.com.
On the web at
www. Yeah, something like that.
And of course, as always, we have to thank our patrons who literally keep us going from week to week, month to month.
We have some new ones from the last episode to this episode.
This is completely true. Just want to give a huge shout out to
Seesaws,
Michael J83, Davin C. Casey.
Oh, man.
What's up, Davin?
How y'all doing?
Laura Ann Elise 7.
Hi.
Samantha Seeger.
Hello, Samantha.
Natalie B.
Welcome back.
J. Walter 1, who is one of those special people who have been following along as we've been doing our research and typing up our notes.
You will probably hear her intro to the Turned Up Podcast in the very near future.
And Josiah 820.
Hello, Josiah.
So thank you to our newest and greatest patrons.
You too can have a shout out and help this podcast keep on going. But a huge thank you to Real Sound Productions, Real Sound Media, for letting us have a place to put our podcast.
That's right. Thank you to Robert Venable for lending his beautiful talents, voice, and research.
That's me. And thank you, Jake Jones, for your beautiful talents, voice, and research on today's episode. Are you making armpit farts?
That's one of my beautiful talents.
Saw you over there flapping with one arm.
You know it.
I know what you're doing. I'm glad that we don't actually fart that way. That'd be weird.
That would be really weird, like out of our armpits?
I know. Or that you can't see it, like this little plume of fog that comes out. I would know where to avoid when walking around Walmart or something, though.
Right?
Or who did it on an airplane.
I don't know. There's been some people that I'm pretty certain I could see a cloud around them.
Like Pigpen from Charlie Brown.
Just, Walmart.
Oh, gotcha.
As always, until next week.
This is Nashville signing out.
Peace.